Hi, this is Dave Darrington, and in this module we'll give you an in-depth look at creating a rule via the Rules Engine. Here, we're going to build upon the introductory material from the last module by doing a step-by-step walkthrough of a rule. Let's start with a basic example, such as looking for a drop in logins over a period of time. We'll take this slow and in the process discuss advanced logic, aggregation, testing, and other key activities that you'll experience when creating and testing your own rules. To work with the Rules Engine, we're going to access the Administration tab within Gainsight and select the Rules Engine from the Operations section of the menu. This is a key screen to understand, so let's review. Starting from the top of the Gainsight interface, let's select the hamburger menu icon at the top left of the screen. Then select Administration. And when that loads, then click the chevron on the top left and select the Rules Engine from the Operations menu item. Now let's explore this interface before we build our first rule. First, we have the default rules list. Here is where you see all of the rules that are currently set up within your organization. You can filter upon these rules in different ways. For example, by typing a name in Filter by Rule Name, you can enter text and the list will filter on the fly. By selecting the magnifying glass, you can get other useful filtering options such as by action type, created by, last updated by, or source object. You may also filter by active or inactive rules. Other options for which you can review your rules are by rule chain, which allow you to group together a sequence of rules. This is really useful for ensuring that rules which must be performed as a chain do so in an organized fashion. Timeline, which presents you with a bird's eye view of your Rules Engine schedule and execution status. Finally, I'd like to bring your attention to Vault. The Vault icon is also featured on this page, giving you the option of searching for and downloading rules that may be useful and saving you time. We'll return to this screen later, but for now, let's go back to the Rules List screen and click the plus rule icon, and we'll begin creating our first rule. Let's begin by setting up our new rule by specifying the following. A rule type of custom. Rule 4, leave this as account. For rule name, select admin :usage drop-in logins, or something that would match your naming convention. And then select a description that's helpful for you to remember what this rule will do, such as looks for a drop-in logins and creates a CTA. Once everything is to your satisfaction, click Next to proceed to the next step. This slide is just a quick reminder that much of your time will be spent working within the setup rule and setup action steps. It's useful to remember that the setup rule step is about finding the data you want to work with. The setup action step is where you tell the Rules Engine what you want to do with this data. Now let's begin to set up our rule. In this case, we will be working with demo data. So if you're working with your own environment, this may not match exactly to what you see. Okay, now let's begin to set up our rule. So the first thing I'd like to show you is that there are two different source fields. I discussed this briefly before. Native data refers to everything in Salesforce, such as contacts, subscriptions, contracts, opportunities, and also Gainsight objects are included here. Matrix data is, of course, the MDA, and we'll be talking about that at this point. So to build my rule, I want to start to bring fields into the show. Now I select my source, which is usage data, and the first thing I'll do is select my account ID. Very important that I select the account ID from the account object, and as I type in field listing here, I'll see that I have an account object below. I'll select ID, so that says account ID. Great. One thing I'll point your attention to is that we have several different objects that we can work with: the usage data, account, and customer info. These are all related. Generally, you'll have either 2 or 3 depending on what object you're working with. So I'd also like to have the account name. And I'll bring that in. And I have multiple options, so I choose from the account object because that's authoritative. And then this time I'd like to have the CSM name. So grab that field in. Now, there's one other thing I want to do. Since I'm looking at a change in time, I want to set up a calculated field. And to do that, I'll click the Add Calculated Field link. I'll add a new field, and this will say logins over past 3 months. This is a comparison by percentage, and A, so that would be used in the formula here, would be a sum. And select that from the drop down. And these are logins for the past 1 week. And B is an average of logins over the past 3 months. Okay, now click OK when I'm ready. In this case, the time identifier is just the date. Okay. So you also may want to put a filter on. In this case, I'm going to select the filter logins not equal to null. And if I'm happy with my rule, I'll click Next. Now we're going to begin creating actions based upon the results returned from the setup rule step. For this basic rule, we want to allow a CSM to be proactive. We'll create a call to action for them to know if a particular account, and there may be more than one, is showing decreased usage by logins, and then be able to take action. Some reminders of what's happening on the back end. First, we get the full data set, and then Gainsight pulls that into its working memory, and thereafter we create actions to work with this data. So now let's build our action by clicking the plus action button on the screen. So now you can see we can select a action type, and let's click Call to Action. And we'll leave this as Create CTA, and we'll begin filling out the fields below. So we'll call our name Drop in Logins. And as you can see, there are asterisk or starred fields here. These are required for us to fill out before we can save the action. So our priority here will be high. We'll select the status of new. Let's select a reason of other. And we'll leave the due date to be run date +5. But you can change this, and we'll leave this as do not skip weekend. Our type will be an event. And this time we could set a playbook or an owner. For an owner, you may want to, like I would in this case, select my account CSM. And the default owner depends on your environment. So I'm going to set this to me. You can't proceed without setting a default owner for this. So that's a very important thing. So generally this has been very vanilla. So one other thing that you could do is use tokens to make these more descriptive. So for example, I could type the @ and I can select my account name. So that's much more descriptive for a call to action that's actionable. Similarly, in the comment section, I could type a description, and I can put that comment and give it a token as well. That's up to you to do. So if you're satisfied with this and you want to save it, click Save. And then if you choose to test it, you'll click Run Now. Now if you're satisfied with your action as you've created it, you'll click Save, and we'll move to the next step. Once we've completed our action, let's perform a test run. With the rules engine, it's pretty hard to run a rule without first testing it. For test, you'll be sent an email with all the details. Rules are batched to limit API calls in Salesforce, but as a result, Gainsight sends you quite a bit of information. Let's step through this. To test a rule, we merely need to select the Run Now link and we'll be prompted with more information. Since it's the test run, let's leave the test run box checked. Remember, this is a safe process and no actions will be performed. If you wish, you can email a copy of the rule to a different address. And if you're really having trouble, you can select the Include Gainsight to send a copy of the output to our team. Now, click Run. Gainsight will process the information and we'll send you an email with the results. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet. Now, as you can see, we have the spreadsheet as an email. And I'll click on the email. You get a brief overview of what happened. Now let's open it up and take a look and see what it contains. Now I can open it from Google Sheets. You can similarly download it and work on it with Excel. Now we'll refer to this again in the troubleshooting module, but in short, you'll get a listing of the execution summary of the run. You'll get a listing of the rule results, and you'll have tabs for each action that was performed. In this case, we only have one action, so we'll have one tab there. This run was successful. Overall, we'll have a number of accounts in the rule results list that you can see here. Here, numbers are negative because this demonstrates a decrease overall, in this case by 100%. Now the Actions tab demonstrates what we would create if this actually ran. In this case, you would see a call to action for each of the accounts listed on the previous tab. Scanning over this shows that things generally look correct. Were I in a production environment, I would very carefully check and then maybe double check that my expectations match results before proceeding with a production run. And finally, we want to schedule the rule. In this case, it would make sense to schedule it to run every day, perhaps after midnight, so that when your CSM team arrives in the morning, they'd have any new CTAs to begin work on. So let's observe this in the rules engine. If you're still in the Actions step, click Schedule from the top of the screen after saving. This will bring you to the scheduling screen. This screen is fairly straightforward. You may set your rule to run a particular recurring schedule, such as daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, and by weekday or every day, depending on your choice. Here we would set our rule to run daily and every day. Start and end dates are usually obvious. These are when you want a rule to begin. Does it end after a particular time or date? In our case, we would set the start date to today, and we'd leave our end date blank. No end date, in other words. For a preferred time, this is as we discussed previously. We're going to set this to 0 hours and a few minutes after midnight. We'll leave our time zone as is, but the time zone may matter to you depending on where your home office is based. The email failures option is an added nicety. If you have a team that monitors BizOps functions, an alias can help that team manage any issues with rules for when you're out of the office. Also, the run for historical periods is something that we will turn off in this case. This may be used where you want to look into the past and have the rule run as if it would for the entire time period. So if your start date is in the past and you select historical periods, you dip into the past for the results. Now if you're ready, select Start and the rule will run every day. An important note to add, in our case, this involves creating a CTA that if something matches our criteria. If CTAs already exist and match, no net new CTAs would be created. So the CTA would stay the same or be updated accordingly. Thanks for joining us for Creating a Rule. In the next module, we'll discuss best practices in working with the rules engine.